Alright, James, this is what we have. Here's a rough sketch of your box. I'm going to hold this here and then look and make sure it's showing up on the camera. Yep, here's a rough sketch of your box. We've got 10 at the top, 16 at the bottom, 15 high, and 21 deep. Now, you talked about angles. A while back I came up, well, not a while back, this is when I first started, so 20 years ago. I came up with a way to build boxes. Because I didn't have a fancy table saw with the angle settings and all that, I had a circular saw. So I came up with an easy, quick way to build a box where you didn't have to know any math, you didn't have to do any angles. So say that your dimensions were 10 at the top, 16 at the bottom, 15 high. That's your end piece. I always start by making that piece first, because this piece helps us make all the other pieces. So I don't have to waste a big piece of wood because I'm just going to grab some scraps. I'm going to cut all these dimensions in half. So it'll be 5 by 7.5 by 8. So I'm going to look real quick after I grab the tape measure. Alright, I'm going to look real quick and find a piece of wood that will do what I want. You will probably be building this out of 3/4, but I'm just going to find a piece of scrap that will work. And here we go. So, I've got my piece of wood. I need to go 8 inches. Put a mark, which really would be your 16. I need to go up 7.5 inches. Put a mark. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my top line for the 7.5, that's the full height. And then the top line was 5, which for you would be 10. Now I have a point and a point, which is the top and the bottom dimensions you gave, cut in half, and I'm going to connect these two. So there we have a miniature version, half size, of the outside edge of your box. So what I will do is I'm going to cut these pieces. So here we have, this is the side of your box in half size. Now I'm going to change the camera angle because I want to show you the way I do the layout. And we're going to assume that this piece, which you said you needed 21 inches wide, would be 21 minus 1.5, which your piece then should be about 19.5 because that's minus 2 3/4 inch thicknesses of wood. Alright, so here's our supposed 19.5 long piece of wood, and then here is your end piece. So this is what I do. On this piece of wood, I've got a square end already. This is a right angle, so I can use that as part of my enclosure. So the first thing I'll do is I'll take the long side. I need basically a piece of wood that fits that. So I lay this piece on the piece of wood. I make sure the back part is square, and I draw a line. And I can take my square edge, make sure you can see that, draw a line, and this would be my first cut. Now you can do it if you have a table saw. You could just measure, and I see that that is 7, mine are half sizes. This is 7 3/4. Now I don't know this angle, and I don't need to know this angle. All I have to do to set the angle, now that I have this piece of wood, is come over to my table saw. Let me take this off so you can see. And stand the piece of wood up, and then crank the adjustment until it matches the piece of wood. Very easy. No math required. Just match that. Anybody can do that. It's very simple. So now I have the size cut. You can also do that with your circular saw if you're using a circular saw. So now I have that, and I would have had this one piece of wood cut. So now we'll assume that this piece of wood is cut and on my pile of stuff to put together. So then I got to do my next piece. Well, if I look at the piece of wood, I've already got an angle cut. So the next piece I want to do is this piece, because it has 2 angles and I've already got one of them. So then I lay this piece of wood up, our end piece pattern, and it'll match the angle, and I draw this piece. Draw my next line for the front. Now keep in mind, if my top piece, let me back up where you can see, if my top piece is going to be and my bottom piece are going to be full length pieces, which they don't have to be, but if they are, I'm going to have to subtract the thickness of each for those. I can either make depending on where the woofer is going to be and how tall it is, I can either make the front piece, which would be the back piece and your piece, a whole piece or a piece minus the two thicknesses, either way. If this piece is going to be minus the two thicknesses, all I'll do is set the piece of wood on there, lined up with the right angle, draw one line, set it up one more time. Here's my second thick, actually, sorry, scratch that. This end where I'm cutting, because this end would already be cut. This end where I'm cutting, set this piece up, line up the angle, draw a line. So there's one thickness of wood accounted for. Set this up, draw another line. There's another piece of wood thickness accounted for. Put a mark, and I draw a line. So then this would be my second cut, giving me this front piece. That would be this piece of wood. So now I've got the bottom, I've got this front piece. Now it's time for the top. The top is the same deal. We've already got one angle. So I'll put this on here, line up the edge, and then draw a line. That will be my final cut. I'll go back and square off my jigsaw or table saw or whatever I'm cutting with, circular saw. And I'll make this cut. Then the final cut is, which probably would be the front baffle for your case. That all I have to do is measure 7.5 and then subtract whatever the thickness of wood. If it's 3/4, then that would give you a total of 6 inches. You mark it, draw a line, cut this piece out. That's your front baffle. I would go ahead and put the hole in it for the speaker. Cut that once you have this before the box is assembled. That way your box doesn't get all messy inside. So there you go. Hopefully that helped.